You ever sat in silence after the storm passed and asked yourself, why did I let that get to me? Why did I give it that much power? Why did I hand over the keys to my peace like that? Because sometimes it's not what happened that broke you, it's how you reacted. You thought you had to respond. You thought silence meant weakness. But the truth is, silence, control, discipline, that's where the power lies. Your life changes the moment you stop reacting. Not tomorrow, not next year, but the very moment you stop letting everything outside control everything inside. That's when the shift happens. That's when you reclaim yourself. Let's talk about 8 truths that'll help you build this life-altering habit. There's a reason your energy feels drained even when you haven't done much. It's not because your body's tired, it's because your soul is carrying weight it never asked to carry. Every time you respond to something that doesn't align with your peace, you're writing a check your spirit has to cash. Not everything deserves your energy. That's a hard truth we resist because we feel obligated to show up for every conflict, every opinion, every distraction. But real growth begins when you start choosing your battles wisely. When you stop offering emotional real estate to people and problems that don't deserve to live in your mind rent-free. Peace is gold, and too many people treat it like spare change. You've got to guard it like treasure because once you give it away, getting it back costs more than you think. You are not obligated to entertain drama just because it's familiar. Some people are addicted to reaction. They poke and prod and wait for you to explode just so they can feel powerful. That's not your burden. When you respond to provocation that doesn't serve your purpose, you're trading your peace for a moment that won't even matter in a week. Your energy is your currency. Spend it wisely. You wouldn't give a thief your house keys, so stop giving toxic people access to your heart. When you understand the value of your emotional energy, stop handing it out like samples. You start filtering what gets your time, what gets your focus, what gets your attention. That's not coldness, that's wisdom. Too many people confuse presence with permission. Just because someone is loud in your life doesn't mean they deserve to be heard. Just because someone has an opinion doesn't mean it has to shape you. Your energy is sacred. It's your internal compass, your emotional fuel, your light. And every time you give it away to gossip, to arguments, to things beneath your character, you dim that light a little. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you're avoiding life. It means you're prioritizing what actually matters. It means you know what's worth fighting for and what's just noise. The world is noisy, but your soul doesn't have to be. Choose silence when silence serves you. Choose distance when distance preserves you. Peace isn't something that just shows up at your door. You have to create it. You have to defend it. And sometimes you have to lose people to keep it. That's not loss, that's gain in disguise. Not everything that's loud is worth listening to. Not everything that demands a reaction deserves one. The enemy of peace is not chaos, it's uncontrolled access. When you let everything and everyone into your energy space, you become a prisoner to your surroundings. But when you become selective, when you guard your inner world like a fortress, you become the gatekeeper of your joy. And the most powerful people are not the loudest in the room, they're the ones who can walk away and feel nothing but clarity. Your energy is like a flame. The wrong people will blow it out. The wrong environments will smother it. The wrong reactions will burn through it. But the right choices, the right boundaries, they'll keep that flame alive. You have to stop asking, why do I feel so drained? And start asking, what did I give my energy to that wasn't worthy of it? Because the answer is almost always found in your reactions. Did you feed into someone's bitterness? Did you defend yourself against someone who already made up their mind about you? Did you chase validation where you should have stood still? That's the exchange. And your peace is too expensive to keep trading like it's cheap. Life will test you over and over. You will be misunderstood, judged, provoked, underestimated. But your power is in how you respond. And more often than not, your power is in not responding at all. That's how you protect your peace. Not by silencing the world, but by turning down its volume in your mind. You don't need to prove yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need to defend your worth to people who haven't earned access to your vulnerability. Your peace is your job, not theirs, and your energy is your responsibility. If you don't protect it, no one else will. There's a maturity that comes when you finally realize not every call deserves a callback. Not every text deserves a reply. And not every insult deserves an explanation. You can't fight every battle and expect to win the war within. At some point, you have to stop reacting, start redirecting. Redirect your energy to what builds you, not what breaks you, to what nourishes your mind, not what drains your soul. There's a difference between being alive and being awake. And when you're awake, you see things clearly. You see who's pulling from you without pouring into you. You see which environments leave you empty no matter how long you stay. That's when you learn to walk away, not out of anger, but out of alignment. Protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. You can't pour from a cup that's always leaking. You can't give your best when you're constantly trying to recover from what you've lost, reacting to people who didn't deserve that kind of power over you. The truth is, some people don't want peace, they want chaos. Because chaos keeps them relevant. Chaos gives them control. And when you stop reacting, you take that control back. You remove the fuel. You silence the fire. You become untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you're intentional. You no longer live on the emotional roller coaster others built. You step off. You stand firm. You own your energy. You owe it to yourself to stop letting every little thing take a piece of you. You are not obligated to participate in dysfunction just because it's familiar. You are not required to defend your peace like it's on trial. Your job is to protect it like it's the only thing keeping you sane, because it is. When you allow unworthy things to chip away at your calm, you're not just losing time, you're losing yourself. Every moment you spend reacting to negativity is a moment stolen from your healing, from your growth, from your purpose. That's not just exhausting, it's dangerous, because the more you react, the more they control you. And the more they control you, the less of you remains. You've got to learn the art of internal silence. The kind of stillness that doesn't mean you don't care, it means you care more about your growth than your ego. You care more about where you're going than who's trying to pull you back. When you operate from a place of peace, your decisions change. Your conversations change. Your entire life begins to shift. Why? Because now you're no longer reacting, you're responding with purpose. You're no longer moving out of frustration, you're moving out of wisdom. That's the power of energy protection. That's the reward of not letting everything get to you. That's what happens when you realize not everything deserves your energy. Your peace is gold. Guard it like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Emotional discipline is the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself when it walks into the room, but it controls the entire atmosphere without saying a word. You know how powerful you are when you could react, but you don't. When you've got every reason to explode, to clap back, to let the world know how you feel, but instead you take a deep breath and you choose silence. That right there, that's the flex. That's the kind of self-control that people don't always understand, but they'll always feel. Because the loudest person in the room might grab attention, but the calmest one commands respect. It's easy to speak from anger. It takes power to speak from patience. When you master that space between stimulus and response, you master your life. Being calm is not weakness. It's not passiveness. It's precision. It's a calculated decision to not let people drag you a storm you've already outgrown. It's understanding that real power isn't in proving your point, it's in protecting your energy. Loud people often operate from fear, from insecurity, from ego. But calm people, they operate from alignment. They're not looking to win arguments, we're looking to win peace. And when you start practicing emotional discipline, you realize that the calmest person in the chaos often holds the most power. Because that kind of calm doesn't come naturally, it's built. It's trained, it's earned through experience, through failure, through the decision to rise above noise and choose clarity. The ability to stay composed when everything inside you wants to react, that's when you know you're leveling up. Because anyone can be calm when life is quiet. But being calm in the middle of conflict, that's rare, that's elite, that's emotional discipline. And it's not about suppressing your feelings, it's about managing them. You feel the anger, but you don't let it drive. You feel the sadness, but you don't let it speak for you. You feel the tension, but you breathe through it instead of lashing out. It's not about being robotic, it's about being intentional. When you learn to regulate yourself, you stop letting people control you. You stop living on their terms. You stop reacting to their chaos and you start responding to your calling. There's a version of you that doesn't argue with fools. That doesn't chase validation. That doesn't lose sleep over people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That version of you has learned that peace is more valuable than being right. That protecting your inner world is more important than controlling the outer one. Emotional discipline gives you freedom not from emotion, but from the trap of letting emotion dictate your choices. You no longer feel the need to match energy, you learn to rise above it. You learn to respond with grace when provoked with hostility. And that's what makes you powerful. Not your volume, not your reaction, your restraint. People think strength is in showing up and saying something every time you feel triggered. But sometimes strength is walking away. Sometimes strength is saying nothing at all. Emotional discipline gives you the ability to delay gratification, to let the moment pass, to let your clarity return before you move. Because if you always speak from the height of emotion, you'll always regret the echo. Being calm lets you assess the moment with wisdom instead of ego. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you from burning bridges you might need to cross later. And it teaches you that not every fire needs your fuel. Some things are better left to burn out on their own. When you embrace emotional discipline, you begin to observe more than you engage. You start listening with the intent to understand, not just reply. You stop inserting yourself in situations that drain your spirit. Your silence becomes a boundary, your calm becomes your shield, and people start to notice, because in a world full of reactions, composure stands out. It confuses the ones who thrive on conflict. It rattles those who expect you to lose your cool. But most of all, it elevates you. Because emotional discipline is the difference between living in survival mode and living with purpose. It's the anchor that keeps your ship steady when the waves of life hit hard. Some of the strongest people you'll ever meet don't raise their voices, they raise their standards. They don't argue with disrespect, they walk away from it. That's what emotional discipline gives you, the power to choose how you show up in every room, in every situation. It teaches you that your reaction is always your responsibility. That no one can drag you out of character unless you let them. And when you stop being emotionally reactive, you start becoming emotionally intelligent. You begin to lead yourself instead of being led by every trigger, every insult, every opinion. That's maturity, that's growth, that's freedom. The beauty of emotional discipline is that it doesn't just protect your peace, it teaches others how to treat you. When you show people that you don't entertain chaos, they start to approach you differently. They come with more respect, more caution, more thoughtfulness. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. Your calm becomes contagious. Your self-control becomes an example. And even when they try to provoke you, they learn quickly that you're not the one to engage in pointless wars. You're too grounded, too focused, too intentional. Emotional discipline becomes your language, and it speaks louder than any outburst ever could. You don't have to be reactive to be real. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to be aggressive to be strong. There's a version of strength that lives in your stillness. That shows up in how you choose to protect your space when someone tries to invade it. That shows up in how you keep your composure when your world feels like it's falling apart. That version of strength is available to you every time you decide to pause before you speak. Every time you breathe instead of break. Every time you choose to be calm, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. That's emotional discipline in action. Calm people don't lack emotion, they've just learned how to sit with it without being consumed by it. They've felt the chaos, but they've chosen clarity. They've been provoked, but they've chosen peace. And they've come to understand that in the long run, the person with the most control over their emotions holds the most control over their future. That kind of discipline spills into every part of your life. It changes how you love, how you lead, how you heal. It makes your decisions sharper, your responses stronger, and your relationships healthier. Because now you're not reacting to wounds, you're responding from wholeness. There is power in being unshakable. Power in not letting people rent space in your mind for free. Power in not letting someone else's chaos dictate your day. That's what emotional discipline gives you. The ability to say, I'm not going to let this change me. I'm not going to let this make me bitter. I'm not going to let this steal my joy. Because joy is not just a feeling, it's a decision. And calm is not just a mood, it's a choice. A daily choice to show up with strength that doesn't need to shout. A daily choice to respond with love when hate tries to knock. A daily choice to let your peace be louder than your pride. Silence is often misunderstood in a world that praises noise. People think if you're not talking, you're not strong. If you're not arguing back, you're not standing up for yourself. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sometimes silence is the boldest statement you can make. It's not the absence of power, it's the presence of control. It means you're not going to let every distraction pull you out of alignment. You're not going to waste your energy explaining yourself to people who already made up their minds. That kind of restraint is power. Silence gives you space to think, to observe, to move wisely. It's not weakness, it's strategy, because when you stay quiet, you can see what others miss. You can hear what's really being said. You can learn the patterns. And when you finally speak, your words hit different because they come from intention, not impulse. There's a certain kind of discipline that comes with choosing silence over reaction. When you're silent, you're not giving anyone the satisfaction of knowing what moves you. You're not showing your hand. You're not letting someone else dictate the rhythm of your response. And in that stillness, you gain leverage. You gather perspective. You stop playing defense and start planning your offense. The person who holds their silence in a world addicted to noise gains a unique kind of power. You no longer feel the need to clap back at every insult, to post every opinion, to defend yourself in every situation. Because deep down you understand that silence isn't giving up, it's rising above. It's saying, I don't need to lower myself to be understood. That's maturity, that's strength, that's strategy. Silence has a way of speaking louder than words ever could. It makes people uncomfortable because it forces them to sit with themselves. It removes the distraction of noise, and when that happens, the truth tends to rise to the surface. People will wonder what you're thinking, how you feel, what you're planning. And in that wonder, you gain power, because you've learned that not everything requires a reaction, not every situation needs your voice. Sometimes your silence is your shield that protects your peace, your clarity, your dignity. And sometimes silence is the most unsettling response you can give. When someone expects chaos and you give them calm, when they expect a reaction and you give them stillness, it flips the power dynamic. They lose control, you gain it. There's wisdom in silence. It allows you to watch people reveal who they really are. You learn who speaks with integrity and who speaks just to be heard. You learn who reacts out of emotion and who moves with intention. The quiet moments give you clarity that noise will never offer. When you're silent, you're able to step back and see the game being played. You're able to move without broadcasting your steps. Because not everything sacred should be shared and not every plan should be spoken. Silence gives you the freedom to evolve without explaining, to heal without announcing, to grow without permission. That's not weakness, that's mastery. That's someone who knows how to move in silence and let results speak volumes. Sometimes people try to provoke you just to see if they can pull you out of character. They throw bait hoping you'll bite. But when you respond with silence, you disarm them. You show them you're not controlled by their chaos. You don't let them rent space in your mind. You don't dance to the beat of their dysfunction. Instead, you keep your composure. You preserve your energy. You walk away if you have to. Not because you're scared, but because you've learned the value of your peace. And you know that every time you choose silence, you're choosing power. You're choosing self-respect. You're choosing to not hand over control of your emotions to people who never deserved it. Silence is the strategy of the wise. It gives you time to assess, to weigh your options, to speak with precision instead of impulse. It's how you stay a step ahead. Loud people might win the moment, but silent people win the long game. Because while others are busy reacting, you're watching. You're learning. You're storing everything for the right moment. That's not running, that's patience. That's the art of timing. And when you finally move, it's with clarity and conviction, not confusion. You don't move to prove anything, you move because it's time. And those kinds of moves can't be stopped because they weren't born from emotion, they were born from wisdom, from calculated silence, from observing more and reacting less. Silence teaches you to be comfortable in your own presence, to not need external validation to feel secure, to not rush to fill awkward spaces with meaningless words. It teaches you that some of the most powerful moments happen in stillness, in the pauses between chaos, in the space where you find your center again. You realize you don't need to be seen to be significant. You don't need to be loud to be heard. Your silence carries weight. It communicates confidence. It sets boundaries. And in a world where everyone's trying to be louder than the next, being silent becomes a rare form of strength. One that doesn't need applause to be effective. One that doesn't need noise to make an impact. There's a reason the strongest chess players don't talk during the game, they think. They observe. They plan 3 steps ahead. That's what silence does. It puts you in position. It gives you the mental clarity to avoid emotional traps. It keeps you from saying things you'll regret. It helps you separate truth from assumption, fact from feeling. And when you're silent long enough, your instincts sharpen. You start seeing things for what they really are, not just what they appear to be. That's how you stop reacting and start responding. That's how you stop being a pawn in someone else's game and start playing your own. Not because you said something, but because you didn't. Not because you showed force, but because you held it. People often mistake silence for submission, but it's not. It's observation, it's emotional intelligence. It's protecting your energy while you decide what deserves a response and what deserves your indifference. Some arguments aren't worth your breath. Some people aren't worth your explanation. Some situations aren't worth your reaction. Silence helps you make that distinction. It helps you detach from the need to prove your point, to be understood, to have the last word. Because at the end of the day, your peace matters more than your pride. Your growth matters more than their validation. And your silence is not weakness, it's a mirror. It shows them more about themselves than your words ever could. Silence builds character. It teaches you how to sit with discomfort, how to endure tension, how to stay grounded when everything around you is shaking. It doesn't mean you're suppressing how you feel. It means you're choosing when and how to express it. It means you've taken the time to process before reacting. And that's a sign of emotional maturity. That's someone who understands that every word has weight and not every moment deserves one. When you speak less, you start listening more, not just to others, but to yourself, to what your soul is saying, to what your intuition is revealing. That inner voice gets louder in silence. And often that voice will tell you exactly what you need to hear if you're quiet enough to listen. When you truly understand the value of silence, you stop fearing it. You stop rushing to fill it. You start to see it as your ally. You use it to diffuse conflict. You use it to protect your truth. You use it to guard your peace. And when others try to interpret your silence, let them. Because silence speaks to those who know how to listen and those who don't. They were never meant to understand you anyway. Your silence isn't for them, it's for you. It's your way of reclaiming control, of saying, I choose not to waste my voice on things beneath my purpose. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's strength, that's strategy. Every reaction you give pulls something from you: energy, time, focus, peace. And when you start to understand the value of those things, you stop giving them away so freely. Not every comment deserves your clapback. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every slight requires a scene. Because every reaction has a price, and the question you have to start asking yourself is this worth my growth? That moment you lose your cool, was it worth stepping back in your healing journey? That argument you engaged in, did it elevate you or did it drain you? Every time you react, you hand over a piece of your power. You're saying, this moment, this person, this situation, it owns my energy now. And most of the time, it's just not worth the cost. Growth isn't just about rising above others, it's about rising above your old self. Your reactive self. The version of you that took everything personal, that jumped into conflict to feel seen. That let pride call the shots. Growth looks like pausing, like breathing before speaking, like choosing peace even when chaos feels justified. And to get there, you've got to be honest with yourself. You've got to stop in the middle of those heated moments and ask, what am I sacrificing here if I react? Because you might win the argument and lose your progress. You might prove your point and still feel empty. When you start measuring your reactions against your growth, you begin to see that silence isn't weakness, it's investment in your healing, in your peace, in your future. It's not about being passive, it's about being selective. You're not ignoring everything. You're just deciding what's actually worth your response. You're reserving your energy for things that grow you, not things that trigger your old wounds. That's a different kind of strength. The kind where you're no longer owned by the moment. You can see the provocation, feel the anger rise, but still say, no, I won't hand over my power. Because you've learned every time you let a temporary emotion lead, it delays permanent transformation. Your old habits are always looking for a way back in. They want you to react like you used to. But the new you is calm, controlled, grounded. And that kind of growth is sacred. It's not something you risk for every petty situation. It's something you guard with your life. We live in a world that glorifies quick comebacks and viral reactions. But what if the real flex is self-control? What if the real power is in being unbothered? That doesn't mean you don't feel things deeply. It means you've learned how to manage your emotions instead of letting them manage you. You've stopped letting people pull you into their storm. You've stopped trying to win battles that don't serve your purpose. You've stopped setting yourself on fire just to prove you're strong. Now, before you react, you pause and ask, is this helping me grow? Or is this dragging me back into cycles I prayed to escape? When you start seeing the cost of reaction, you realize that sometimes walking away is not giving up, it's growing up. Everything you react to has the power to shape you. And if you're not careful, your identity becomes a collection of other people's chaos. You become reactive instead of proactive, defensive instead of deliberate. But when you pause, when you take inventory of what's really worth your energy, you regain control of your narrative. You stop being a character in someone else's drama, start becoming the author of your own piece. Every time you choose stillness over noise, patience over pride, reflection over reaction, you are sowing into your growth. You are saying, my future matters more than this moment. That's not weakness, that's vision. That's emotional intelligence. That's knowing that the biggest battles aren't outside of you, they're within. Reaction is easy. It's what we do when we're hurt, frustrated, or tired. But growth, that takes work. It takes restraint to not match someone's energy when they come at you sideways. It takes maturity to say, this isn't worth my setback. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll start seeing the patterns. The same situations keep showing up, not to break you, but to test you. To ask, have you really changed? The answer isn't in what you say, it's in what you don't say. It's in the times you choose peace over payback. It's in the moments you sit with your emotions instead of letting them run wild. Every reaction is a fork in the road toward growth or regression, and the person you want to become, they're built in those silent choices. Think about the times you reacted and regretted it later, the words you wish you could take back, the moments that pulled you out of character. Was it worth it? Probably not. And now you're learning that not everything deserves a piece of your soul, that not every situation is a reflection of your worth, that some things are beneath the level you're trying to live on. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect. When you choose not to react, you're protecting the version of you that's been through too much to go back to who you used to be. You're saying, I've fought too hard for this peace. I'm not giving it up just to prove I'm right. That mindset changes everything. We don't talk enough about the cost of reaction, how it takes from your mental clarity, how it shifts your focus, how it creates emotional residue that lingers long after the moment passes. That's why emotional discipline is essential. Not for other people, for you. Because your peace is expensive. And every time you react from a wounded place, you devalue that peace. You make yourself available to storms you've already survived. But growth requires discernment. The ability to pause and ask, what is this moment really asking of me? And what am I willing to give? If the answer costs your growth, your healing, your peace, it's too expensive. Learn to walk away. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise. The truth is, most people don't expect you to choose growth. They expect the old version of you, the quick to clap back you. You always got to have the last word you. So when you start responding differently or not at all, it confuses them. It unsettles them. But that's the power of growth. It creates new boundaries that the old you didn't have. It creates distance from situations that used to control you. It redefines your identity. And every time you resist the urge to react, you're saying that version of me no longer exists. That's transformation. It's not loud. It's not flashy. But it's powerful. It's life-changing. And it starts with one question: is this worth my growth? Most of the time, the answer will set you free. As you become more intentional, you'll start noticing the triggers before they explode. You'll feel the heat rising. But instead of letting it boil over, you'll step back, breathe, observe, and ask yourself, who do I want to be right now? That's when you take back your power. That's when you become the person who leads their emotions instead of being led by them. That's the difference between surviving and evolving. Surviving reacts, evolving reflects. And that pause, that moment of internal conversation, is where growth lives. Every time you do it, you strengthen your future. You invest in your peace. You say, I've got more important things to build in a response to this nonsense. That's how you grow in silence. That's how you win without saying a word. Some people will take your lack of reaction as indifference. Let them. They don't understand the work it took for you to get to this place. They don't know the nights you wrestled with your anger, the battles you fought just to find peace. Your growth isn't for them to validate. It's for you to honor. And every moment you choose growth over ego, Healing over hurt, peace over pride, you are honoring that work. You're honoring the future you're building. You're saying, my energy is sacred. My peace is non-negotiable. My reaction is earned, not given. That's a whole new level of living. One where you no longer live in reaction mode, but in alignment mode. And that shift is where transformation takes root. You can't control everything, but you can control how you respond. And in that control lies freedom. Freedom from drama. Freedom from toxic cycles. Freedom from always needing to prove yourself. That freedom isn't found in the loud moments, it's found in the quiet ones. The ones where you choose to rise above. The ones where you let peace win. The ones where you whisper to yourself, this isn't worth it. My growth means more. That's not running from the fight, that's choosing your future. That's wisdom in action. That's what elation looks like. And every day you practice that choice, you step closer to the person you were always meant to become. Just because someone throws you an invitation to chaos doesn't mean you need to RSVP. You're not obligated to show up to every argument. You're not required to defend your name in every room where it's misunderstood. You're not responsible for educating people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That's a powerful shift in mindset. Because when you finally understand your worth, you realize how unnecessary it is to prove it to anyone who's not interested in honoring it. The old version of you might have shown up to every battle, ready to explain, ready to fight, ready to be heard. But growth teaches you to protect your peace, even if it means letting someone else think they've won. Arguments are often traps. They're bait strategies meant to pull you out of alignment. And when you're reactive, you fall for it. You give people control over your mood, your energy, your day. But when you pause and ask yourself, do I really need to step into this? You take your power back. Most arguments aren't about resolution, they're about ego. They're about someone needing to feel right, not someone seeking truth. And when you understand that, it changes everything. You stop letting your emotions get hijacked by people who don't even care about peace. You start choosing calm over chaos, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and exhausting yourself. Not every confrontation leads to clarity. Not every back and forth ends in growth. And some people aren't looking for understanding, they're looking for drama. They want to pull you into their storm because they can't stand the calm in you. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself tangled up in arguments that don't align with the person you're becoming. That's why you've got to be selective. You've got to ask, will this make me better? Or just busier? Because when you're focused on building, on healing, on evolving, you can't afford to show up to every petty debate. Your peace is too expensive to gamble with. Silence can feel like surrender in the moment, but it's actually a declaration. It says, I don't need to convince you. I don't need your validation. I know who I am. That kind of confidence is intimidating to people who thrive on conflict. They're used to getting a reaction. They feed off the energy of disagreement. But when you stop giving them that, it disrupts their whole strategy. It leaves them talking to themselves. And that's not a loss, it's a win. A silent win. One that protects your emotional bandwidth and keeps your focus on what really matters. Because every time you engage in unnecessary conflict, you rob yourself of clarity. You spend energy on distractions instead of direction. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. Not because you don't care, because you care too much about your own growth to keep stepping backwards. You've done the inner work. You've fought for your peace. You've cried, healed, and rebuilt parts of yourself no one sees. So now when chaos knocks on your door, you don't always answer. You sit in your strength. You remember how far you've come. And you remind yourself that not every opinion deserves your voice. Not every attack requires your presence. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's you saying, I've outgrown this level of conflict. I've got bigger things to fight for. People will provoke you and then call you difficult when you don't engage. They'll gaslight you into thinking silence is guilt. But don't fall for it. Silence is sometimes the only tool you have left when words have been weaponized. When communication has become manipulation, you know your truth, you know your heart. And more importantly, you know what peace feels like now. That's your compass, that's your boundary. And when you hold to that, even in the face of pressure, you grow stronger. You start to see arguments not as threats, but as opportunities to practice restraint, to protect your vibe, to honor your higher self. There's a kind of strength that doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be seen to be powerful. It just holds space, it holds peace, it holds focus. And when you embody that, you stop being so easily triggered. You stop feeling the need to jump into every disagreement. You recognize the traps for what they are, distractions. You realize that every argument you attend costs you something: your energy, your clarity, your progress. And most of the time, the price is far too high, so you make a new choice. You learn to walk away, not to run, not to retreat, but to rise above. That's emotional maturity in motion. You can't build your future if you're always stuck defending your past. You can't move forward if you're constantly pulled into battles that lead nowhere. Some people argue to argue, not for clarity, not for growth, but for the adrenaline, for the need to feel dominant. And the moment you realize that, you take a step back and say, this isn't my fight. Not because you're scared, but because you're secure. Secure enough to know that your peace is more valuable than their chaos. Secure enough to know that what you're building requires your full attention, not pieces of it scattered in arguments that don't matter in the long run. The more you evolve, the less you argue. The more you heal, the more you pause before responding. You start asking yourself better questions. What's the outcome of this? What do I gain by engaging? And often the answer is nothing. No growth. No clarity. Just tension. Just the weight of someone else's emotions dumped into your space. And when you realize that, you become intentional. You stop entertaining everything that comes your way. You start protecting your energy like it's sacred. Because it is. You've got purpose now. You've got vision. And nothing derails purpose faster than being emotionally entangled in meaningless conflict. Arguments are distractions dressed up as dialogue. And while some conversations are necessary for growth, many are just emotional traps. You've got to know the difference. You've got to know when to speak and when to stay still, when to clarify and when to cut the conversation off. That's wisdom, that's strategy. And it's something the old you might not have had, but now you do. Now you've lived enough, heard enough, healed enough to know that your peace is priority. And anyone who threatens that even with words isn't worth your reaction, let them talk. Let them assume. Let them think they won, because real victory isn't loud, it's quiet, it's stable, it's you unmoved. The temptation to react will always be there, especially when you feel disrespected, unheard, or misunderstood. But that's the test. That's the moment where you choose your evolution over your ego. Anyone can react, but not everyone can rise. Not everyone can look at a situation and say, I see what this is and I choose peace anyway. That's strength. That's power. That's what sets you apart. So when you feel the heat rise in your chest, when you feel the words forming on your tongue, ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this useful? Or is this just an old version of me trying to resurface? And then choose accordingly. It takes discipline to stay grounded when your emotions beg you to explode. But that discipline is what builds character. That restraint is what builds self-respect. Every time you walk away from an argument that doesn't serve you, you're rewriting your narrative. You're proving to yourself that you are no longer a prisoner to other people's opinions. You are not defined by the need to be understood by everyone. You are defined by the peace you carry, the energy you protect, and the self-control you've earned through hard seasons. That's your power. And you don't have to prove it through arguments. You prove it through presence. Presence is stronger than protest. Sometimes just being unshaken is the loudest statement you can make. When you stop showing up to battles that don't grow you, you start gaining ground in your purpose. You start feeling lighter, clearer, more focused, and that clarity gives you confidence. The kind of confidence that says, I don't need to win this argument to win in life. That's the shift. That's the place of emotional wealth. And it doesn't come easy, it comes through consistent choices. The kind where you check in with yourself before you engage with others. The kind where you prioritize peace over proving your point. You don't owe anyone your energy, especially when that energy is being pulled into a space that won't return it with growth. Some people argue out of habit, out of brokenness, out of projection. And the more you heal, the more you recognize that. You start to see that not everything is personal. Some things are just patterns. Some people don't want peace, they want power over you. And when you deny them that, they get louder. That's okay, let them. You're not responsible for their reaction. You're responsible for your own response. And when that response is silence or stillness or walking away, that's not avoidance. That's alignment. This world is full of noise, full of distractions, full of invitations to lower yourself. But you weren't called to attend every storm. You were called to be the calm in the middle of it. To be the one who doesn't flinch when provoked. To be the one who guards their energy like a treasure chest, not a donation bin. That's how you protect your legacy. That's how you stay in your lane. You remember moment by moment that you're not here to win arguments. You're here to win peace. To win purpose. And when you keep your eyes on that, the arguments become smaller, and the distractions lose their grip. There will always be people who test your patience, situations that shake your peace, and moments that challenge your strength, but your response will always be your choice. That's your power. You can't control what others say. You can't always predict what life will throw at you, but you do have authority over your reaction. And that is the foundation of self-mastery. When you stop giving others permission to dictate your emotional state, you take back control of your life. No one can reach into your chest and steal your calm unless you hand it over. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. You stop pointing fingers and start standing in responsibility. You stop saying they made me angry and start owning I allowed myself to be moved. It's easy to blame other people for your outbursts. Easy to say I wouldn't have reacted like that if they hadn't done what they did. But that mindset keeps you bound. It gives away your power, because if your mood is always at the mercy of someone else's behavior, then you've made yourself a slave to circumstance. That's not strength. That's survival. And you weren't made to survive, you were made to rise. Rising means looking at chaos and choosing peace anyway. It means standing in storms without letting the storm inside you. That's not weakness, it's the highest form of discipline. The ability to stay rooted, steady, and intentional no matter how loud the world becomes. Some people want to provoke you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your calm disrupts their chaos. Your peace exposes their lack of it. And when they can't control you, they'll try to trigger you. That's the strategy of insecure souls. They poke, they prod, they push buttons, hoping you'll give them a reaction that validates their dysfunction. But when you don't, when you pause instead of pounce, you break the cycle. You show them in yourself that you're no longer reactive, you're responsive. That difference is everything. Reaction is emotion without direction. Response is power with purpose. And the moment you choose that, you become someone who can no longer be easily shaken. There is so much power in the pause. In that brief moment between what happens and how you handle it. In that space, you have a choice to react and possibly regret, or to breathe and reclaim control. Most people skip that pause. They act on impulse. They let anger or pride or pain speak for them. And later they're left cleaning up the damage. But the ones who grow, the ones who evolve, they make that pause their practice. They train their minds to slow down, to process, to choose clarity over chaos. That doesn't mean they don't feel it. Means they lead their emotions instead of being led by them. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You don't have to match someone else's energy to prove your strength. The moment you realize you can be calm and still powerful, you stop letting people bait you into conflict. You start seeing manipulation for what it is, an attempt to pull you out of character. And your character is your crown. When you lose it, you lose part of yourself, so guard it. Guard it like your future depends on it, because it does. Every response is a brick in the foundation you're building. Make sure they're solid. Make sure they're intentional. Make sure they reflect who you're becoming, not what tried to break you. Responsibility isn't always glamorous. It means owning your part even when someone else is clearly wrong. It means refusing to use someone else's behavior as an excuse to lower your standards. That's hard. Especially when you feel disrespected, when you feel attacked. When responsibility doesn't mean accepting blame for what someone else did. It means choosing not to let it define your next move. It means staying rooted in your integrity even when the world wants you to erupt. That kind of strength isn't loud, it's consistent. It shows up day after day, moment after moment, quietly shaping your character into something unshakable. Nobody can force you to lose your cool unless you give them that access. You're not a puppet. You're not a machine with buttons anyone can push. You're a soul with agency, with discipline, with vision. And your peace isn't for sale. Not to coworkers, not to family, not to strangers on the street. The moment you start valuing your emotional state like a treasure, you stop tossing it into every conflict. You start choosing who deserves a response, who deserves silence, and who deserves distance. That's maturity. Not reacting isn't avoidance, it's alignment. It's knowing what's worth your energy and what's just noise trying to break your rhythm. One of the most freeing realizations is this: just because someone throws fire at you doesn't mean you have to catch it. You don't have to respond in kind. You don't have to mirror their chaos. In fact, the most powerful thing you can do is stay grounded in your truth. Let them yell, let them twist words, let them build their storm. You stay centered. You stay in control of your tone, your focus, your pace. Because when you stay calm in the face of rage, you expose the instability of everything around you. That's not control over others, it's control over yourself. And that's the only control that ever really matters. There will be days where everything in you wants to snap, where your old self wants to rise and set everything on fire. That's okay, you're human, but maturity is choosing not to let those emotions lead. It's telling yourself, yes, I feel this, but I don't have to act on it. It's sitting with the discomfort and letting it pass instead of projecting it. And that choice, made over and over, builds something sacred, self-respect. Because every time you stay in control, you tell yourself you're worth protecting. You prove to yourself that your peace matters. And the more you do it, the stronger that inner voice becomes. People will test you. Life will test you. But your response is still yours. No one can reach inside your soul and pull the trigger on your temper unless you give them the weapon. So don't disarm them, disarm the urge. Disarm the narrative that says you must defend yourself at all costs. Sometimes the cost is too high. Sometimes the fight isn't worth the fallout. And when you start seeing your response as a tool for building, not just surviving, you treat it differently. You sharpen it. You practice it. You protect it. Because you understand now your reaction writes your story. Make sure it's a story you're proud to read later. There's a quiet power in the person who refuses to be moved by provocation. The one who meets aggression with grace. The one who doesn't rise to the bait but stands firm in who they are. That doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've chosen a different kind of strength. A strength that isn't based on dominance but on discernment. A strength that says, I don't need to shout to be heard. I don't need to fight to be strong. That kind of person is rare. That kind of person is dangerous to those who rely on chaos. Because you can't control someone who's mastered their response. Emotional discipline is one of the most underrated forms of greatness. We praise the loud, the bold, the quick to speak, but it's the quiet, the thoughtful, the intentional who carry real power. Because they move with purpose. They don't waste energy proving their point in every room. They know their value. And that knowing shapes every response. You can feel it in the way they pause before they speak. In the way they don't flinch when they're misunderstood. That's not detachment, it's wisdom. It's the fruit of someone who has learned through fire. That reaction is easy, but restraint is earned. You don't owe anyone your emotional chaos. Not the person who cut you off in traffic. Not the ex who keeps testing your boundaries. Not the friend who betrayed you. You owe yourself clarity. You owe yourself peace. And the only way to protect that is to take full responsibility for how you show up. It's not about denying your feelings. It's about directing them. Saying, yes, I'm angry. Yes, that hurt. But I get to choose how I respond. That is where your power lies, not in pretending, but in leading. Not in reacting, but in rising. Mastering your response doesn't mean you never feel deeply. It means you feel everything and still choose wisely. You feel the sting of disrespect and choose not to retaliate. You feel the rush of adrenaline and choose not to lash out. You feel the pull of old patterns and choose a new path anyway. That's what separates the healed from the hurting, the conscious from the reactive. Because when you take full ownership of your emotional output, you stop bleeding on people who didn't cut you. You stop reliving the past in every present moment. You become grounded, stable, rooted. Not because life stops shaking, but because you learn to stand stronger through it. Every time you take responsibility for your response, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You say to the world, I will not be a puppet to your drama. I will not let your storms dictate my temperature. That's courage. That's leadership. And it starts with small moments. Choosing not to clap back. Choosing not to spiral. Choosing to breathe instead of blow up. Over time, those small moments build something unshakable. A presence, a poise, a power that no one can take from you because it wasn't given, it was earned. And once you've tasted that kind of emotional freedom, you'll never settle for anything less again. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing everything with intention. It's not silence because you have nothing to say. It's silence because you've outgrown the need to say it. There comes a time when your best move isn't louder words or faster action, it's presence. It's the shift from being triggered to being transformed. And when that shift happens, people start to notice. Not because you made an announcement, but because your energy feels different. It's no longer scattered, reactive, or desperate for validation. It's grounded, calm, and unshakably clear. That kind of presence speaks for itself. People who once rattled you no longer reach you. The arguments that used to pull you in now pass by without a response. You've learned how to protect your peace without permission. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. You don't have to correct every lie, fix every misunderstanding, or chase every attack. When you know who you are, you realize not every battle is worth your breath. You start to choose your silence like you used to choose your comebacks. And the crazy thing, that silence starts to make more noise than your words ever did. Because it says, I don't need to engage in chaos, I've grown beyond it. You stop reacting, not because you don't care, but because you finally do about yourself, your energy, your direction. That kind of maturity intimidates those who are still addicted to noise, but it attracts those who are ready to rise. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who can hold their peace while everything around them shakes. Stillness is not apathy, it's clarity. It's a declaration that says, I refuse to lose myself just to prove something to you. And when you live like that, people start to pay attention. The ones who once tried to get a reaction from you. They start to feel your absence even in the same room. Because you're no longer emotionally accessible in the ways they relied on. You're not the same version of yourself they used to manipulate or provoke. You've stepped into a new posture, one where your stillness becomes your sword. You defend your energy by not giving it away cheaply anymore. Evolution doesn't require applause. It doesn't need validation. It moves in silence and the results do the talking. That's why stillness is such a powerful message. It tells the world, I don't need your chaos to define me anymore. You begin to recognize that half the battles you once fought were distractions from your growth. Now, instead of reacting to what's around you, you reflect on what's within you. And that shift changes everything. You stop feeding drama. You stop chasing closure from people who never wanted peace. You stop trying to convince anyone of your worth. You just walk in it. And that silent walk, that quiet confidence, it echoes. There's a reason people get uncomfortable when you stop responding like you used to. Your evolution exposes their stagnation. Your restraint makes their manipulation powerless. The moment you stop reacting, you interrupt the pattern. And when people can't pull you back into the version of yourself they're comfortable with, they either evolve with you or exit. Either way, your stillness has done its job. It filtered the room. And it will keep doing it because growth has a frequency and not everyone can handle it. But don't lower your vibration to keep old connections alive. Let your stillness speak. Let it create space. Let it pull you closer to purpose and away from people who only love the old you. It's wild how powerful your presence becomes when it's no longer tied to pleasing or proving. You can walk into a space and shift the atmosphere not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. That's what stillness does. It connects you to your center. It keeps you rooted when emotions try to uproot you. You no longer need to raise your voice to be heard. Your peace becomes the loudest thing in the room. And people feel it. They feel your boundaries. They feel your energy no longer bending to chaos. That kind of presence makes noise without making a scene. It leaves a mark without leaving a mess. It speaks, even when you're silent. Not everyone will understand your stillness. Some will confuse it for coldness. Others will take it as arrogance. Let them. Their interpretation isn't your responsibility. Your peace isn't for their approval. You didn't get this calm by accident, you earned it. You went through storms that nearly took you out. You healed from things that tried to define you. And now, your quiet is your crown. You don't need to announce your growth for it to be real. Just be still and let the results speak. Those who are meant to understand will feel it. And those who aren't, let your silence be the last word. Stillness doesn't mean weakness. It means you finally realize your energy is sacred. You don't give it away on impulse anymore. You don't light yourself on fire to prove a point to people who only show up to watch you burn. You've learned to pause before you speak, to think before you react, to walk away before you escalate. That's not silence, that's strength, that's strategy, that's healing in motion. And when people see that, when they see you not flinching in moments that used to break you, they start to realize something changed. You're not avoiding the fight, you've simply outgrown the battlefield. Sometimes the loudest message you can send is no message at all. No explanation, no rebuttal. Just your absence from the noise. That absence creates a presence. It fills the room with a new kind of power, the kind that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't explain. The kind that knows its worth and acts accordingly. That's stillness. That's what happens when you evolve past the need to be understood by everyone. You start valuing peace over validation, healing over proving, and in that space your soul starts to stretch. You begin to feel free not because everything around you changed, but because you did. Stillness is a choice, and like all choices, it requires discipline. It means resisting the urge to react when someone's trying to provoke you. It means sitting with discomfort instead of spilling it on others. It means choosing not to explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. That kind of control is rare. It's not always celebrated, but it's always respected. Because deep down, even the loudest voices recognize the strength in someone who refuses to be moved. And when they see you holding your center, they either rise to meet you or reveal why they never belonged in your space to begin with. The beautiful thing about stillness is that it makes room for clarity. When you stop reacting, you start seeing. You see who really supports you. You see which battles were never yours. You see how much energy you used to waste trying to fix what was never meant to be fixed. In that clarity, you start choosing differently. You walk away quicker. You forgive faster. You hold tighter to your peace. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned what's worth caring about. And that kind of awareness, that's a superpower. One that doesn't need an audience, only alignment. People often fear what they can't provoke. When they can't trigger you, they lose access to your emotions. And without that access, they can't control the outcome. That's why stillness is so unsettling to the unhealed, because it forces them to face themselves. Your refusal to engage becomes a mirror. Your silence becomes a boundary. And they're left wrestling with their own reflection. You don't need to attack. You don't need to defend. Just stay still. Let them feel the gap between who you were and who you've become. That gap is your growth. That distance is your evolution. When you start to evolve, your reactions naturally slow down. What used to offend you now amuses you. What used to hurt you now teaches you. That's because stillness has given you space to observe instead of absorb. You no longer internalize everything thrown your way. You've developed filters, emotional boundaries that keep your peace intact. And that filter, that stillness, is a form of emotional intelligence. It keeps you from taking things personally that were never about you in the first place. It helps you see through projection, past manipulation, and into the heart of your own healing journey. There's a version of you that people don't expect, the one who doesn't respond the way you used to. And when they meet that version, they realize you've grown in ways they didn't prepare for. Your stillness throws them off. They were ready for the argument, the reaction, the chaos. But you didn't bring it. You brought peace. You brought maturity. And that disruption. That's where your power lies. It's not in winning debates, it's in walking away from conversations that compromise your soul. You've shifted from performing for others to protecting your inner world. That kind of shift can't be faked. It's felt. Stillness is your silent revolution. It's you reclaiming your time, your mind, and your energy from anything that doesn't serve your future. It's not passive, it's powerful. It doesn't seek revenge, it seeks resolution. And sometimes that resolution comes in the form of distance, in the form of detachment, in the form of walking in a room and letting your healed spirit do the speaking. That doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be embodied. And when it is, people will feel it. Some will be drawn to it. Others will be repelled by it. But none will be able to deny it. Mastering your reaction doesn't mean denying how you feel. It means learning how to direct it. Because when you can control your reaction, you no longer let outside forces dictate your inner state. You become steady in a world that tries to shake you. That control is the difference between peace and chaos, growth and stagnation, wisdom and impulsiveness. Life will always come with pressure, unexpected challenges, disrespectful people, confusing moments. But the way you respond to those moments shapes the reality you live in. Every reaction either builds you or breaks you. And when you realize that, you stop handing out your energy to everything that pokes at you. You learn to pause, breathe, and respond with intention, not emotion. Most people never slow down long enough to think before they respond. They explode, they panic, they lash out. And then they wonder why their life feels like a cycle of regrets. The truth is, you can't keep reacting the same way and expect different outcomes. Mastery begins with awareness. It starts when you finally admit that your reactions aren't always serving your highest self. That some of your problems aren't just what happened to you, they're how you responded to it. When you own that, you take back your power. You stop blaming and start building. Because reaction without reflection is just repetition. And repetition of the wrong habits will always lead you back to the same pain. Learning how to master your reaction is like building a muscle. At first, it's uncomfortable. You want to go back to what's familiar, to the clapping back, the proving, the emotional outbursts. But as you start choosing peace, you begin to feel the weight of what you've been carrying. You start realizing how much energy you've lost trying to control what you can't control: other people's behavior, their opinions, their approval. That's when something shifts. You no longer see silence as weakness or walking away as losing. You recognize that your growth demands discipline. You train yourself to listen more and react less. You embrace the pause between stimulus and response as the sacred space where your power lies. Mastery isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. It's about making decisions that serve your long-term peace, not your short-term ego. You start asking yourself better questions. Is this worth my energy? Is this response in alignment with who I'm becoming? Will this action reflect my maturity or my wounds? When you live from that place, you start moving different. You stop trying to win arguments and start winning your own respect. That shift, though small at first, changes everything. You become less reactive and more reflective. You become less impulsive and more aware. You start living by design, not default. Reactions are often driven by triggers, and those triggers are usually tied to wounds you haven't healed. When someone says something that offends you, it's not always about what they said, it's about what it awakened in you. Mastering your reaction means doing the inner work to understand your own emotional landscape. It means being honest about what still hurts, what still controls you, and what needs to be released. When you become emotionally intelligent, you stop being a slave to the moment. You begin to move from a place of stability. That doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply, but respond wisely. You give your emotions space, not control. The world will keep giving you reasons to react. People will test you. Life will pressure you. But if every reaction costs you peace, is it really worth it? That's the question mastery asks you to answer. Because mastery isn't about pretending to be unbothered, it's about choosing what's worthy of a response. Some things require silence, others require strategy, and a few may require strength. But rarely will they require rage. When you can respond without rage, without proving, without panic, that's power. That's what real strength looks like. The kind of strength that doesn't need to seem to be seen. The kind that commands respect without demanding it. People will notice when you stop reacting like you used to. They'll try to pull you back into the old you, the one who got easily offended, easily distracted, easily provoked. But when your reaction changes, so does the dynamic. Suddenly they're confused. They don't know how to handle your calm. That calm becomes your advantage. It keeps you from losing control. It helps you stay focused on your purpose. Because every time you react without thinking, you lose direction. You get sidetracked by things that don't even matter in the bigger picture. But when you master your reaction, you stay aligned with your goals. You don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions for you. Mastery doesn't come from isolation. It comes from confrontation, facing the situations that used to throw you off and responding with a new mindset. It comes from practice, from failing and trying again, from pausing when everything in you wants to explode, from taking a breath instead of taking offense. Over time, that practice becomes your power. People start to notice your restraint. They feel the difference in your energy. You become a calming presence, not a chaotic one. And that presence builds influence. Because in a world full of loud reactions, calm becomes rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. Every time you react from a place of hurt, you give your pain the microphone. Every time you react from a place of healing, you give your purpose the platform. The difference is everything. You don't need to justify your growth. You don't need to prove your evolution. Just live it. Let your new reactions be the proof. Let the way you handle pressure, disrespect, delays, and disappointment show that you've done the work. You no longer need to defend yourself in chaos. You let your character do the speaking. That shift is subtle, but it's revolutionary. Because when you master your reaction, you stop letting life push you around. You start pushing forward. People who can control their reactions are rare because it requires emotional maturity. And maturity doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you've faced enough storms to know that peace is the only thing worth protecting. It happens when you realize that not every fight is yours, not every comment needs a clapback, not every disrespect deserves your energy. That clarity doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. You start moving with intention. You start choosing silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've outgrown the need to say it. That's the kind of discipline that turns noise into wisdom and chaos into growth. When you're reactive, people can manipulate you. They can push your buttons and predict your moves. But when you're in control of your reaction, you become unpredictable. You don't give them the satisfaction of your outrage. You don't give them the pleasure of your breakdown. You protect your peace like it's priceless, because it is. Your peace is not negotiable. It's the foundation of everything you're building. And the more you master your reaction, the more peace you create, not just for yourself, but for the people connected to you. Your stillness becomes a ripple effect. It calms others. It sets a tone. It changes environments. Mastering your reaction requires knowing your values. When you know what matters most, you stop being swayed by what matters least. You stop reacting to every inconvenience like it's the end of the world. You learn to zoom out, to put things in perspective. You start asking yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Will this matter tomorrow? That perspective makes you powerful. It keeps you grounded when emotions try to pull you into drama. It allows you to lead yourself with wisdom and self-leadership. That's the beginning of mastering your life. Because if you can't lead yourself through a moment, how can you lead yourself through a mission? Mastery gives you options. Where others see only fight or flight, you see reflection and response. You see strategy where others see struggle. You see lessons where others see offense. That mindset shift turns every setback into a setup. Because even when things go wrong, you're not just reacting, you're learning. You're adjusting. You're choosing to grow instead of explode. That's a skill most people never develop. They keep living in cycles, not because life doesn't offer them new chances, but because their reactions keep recreating the same reality. But not you. Not anymore. You've made the decision to lead, not just survive. When you master your reaction, you unlock the door to emotional freedom. You're no longer tied to the moods of other people. You're no longer triggered by things that once broke you. You're not numb, you're disciplined. You still feel deeply, you still love deeply, but you respond from a healed place, from a thoughtful place. That space allows you to make choices that reflect who you're becoming, not who you've been. And every time you do that, you take another step toward the life you were meant to live. A life led by purpose, not reaction. By vision, not triggers. That's what it means to master your life one response at a time. When you start choosing your peace over pointless battles, when you begin pausing instead of reacting, when you let your silence speak louder than your rage, your life begins to transform. You stop being a puppet controlled by the strings of every insult, every inconvenience, every disrespect. You rise above it. You grow beyond it. You see, true strength was never about proving a point. It's always been about knowing when to walk away, knowing when to preserve your dignity instead of defending your ego. The power isn't in the noise, the power is in the stillness, in the decision to remain unbothered, grounded, focused. Because every reaction is a choice. And every choice is either building the life you want or keeping you stuck in the one you're trying to escape. Mastering your reaction is how you take back your story. You no longer let life drag you around like a storm-tossed ship. You become the calm in the chaos. You start responding from wisdom, not wounds. From clarity, not confusion. That's where your breakthrough lies. Not in fighting every fire, but in becoming fireproof. Not in yelling to be heard, but in growing so loud in your peace that the noise doesn't even reach you anymore. Some will misunderstand silence. Some will call your calm a weakness. Let them, because the ones who misunderstand your peace have not yet made peace with themselves. You're not here to react your way through life. You're here to lead. You're here to evolve. You're here to guard your energy like the treasure it is and move with the kind of grace that turns heads and heals hearts. You are no longer at the mercy of outside chaos. You've built something stronger within. And that stillness, that self-control, that emotional discipline, that's the new version of you. So today I challenge you, don't let one careless comment ruin your whole day. Don't let one rude person pull you out of character. You don't give that much power away. You've come too far to keep giving small things big reactions. Guard your peace. Stay rooted. Respond with intention. Choose growth. Because once you master your reaction, you unlock the light can be real to live calm, clear, confident, and unstoppable. Thank you for your time, for your heart, and for your energy today. May you continue to walk in wisdom, live in peace, and rise in purpose. God bless you.